It's only got one microphone option, so if that's going to end up not.
Sorry, what was that?
It's only got one microphone option, so if it's just not working there,
Okay.
so they can try this. I'll put it up there. If this one doesn't get it, then
Okay.
I'll just put in the obituary at the bottom.
Okay.
All right.
Should we go ahead and resume now, then?
If you want to. If you want to go ahead, that's up to you.
Is there anything else that you want to try?
No,
We've got some technical problems,
Okay.
people.
this one worked last time we did the service, so we didn't know Mike had no issues.
Right. Okay.
It's also the slowest Chromebook I've ever seen.
I think we ought to just get on with it.
Yeah, you can go ahead. I'll see.
I know she keeps saying that, but I know that there's something that you can try to fix it. I'll stall.
I would say I don't have.
But if
I
you
don't
have
have
any
Mike.
other ideas, then
Yeah.
go ahead.
Yeah, you can.
Okay.
They can hear it now.
They can?
Yep.
Okay.
They can hear it
You
now.
can hear it.
I didn't change a single thing. Okay.
Okay.
I don't know.
All right, we're back. Okay, so Ray Hughes, I'd like to invite you to come up and speak now. And again, Ray is involved with the Doolittle Raiders. He's a companion and an escort for that group, helps take them around to all of their shows and readings and so forth. And he met my dad at some point through their joint interest in the military and became really close friends. Thank you very much, Ray.
Hi, Andrea.
Hi, Ray. Thanks so much.
It's just a pleasure and an honor to even be addressing my friend Jack Sanking. I was a caretaker and an escort around the country for the Doolittle Raiders. Tom Griffin, who was a a navigator on Plane 9 and was shot down 3 times, captured, was a POW, was living in a nursing home down in Cincinnati. And I would go in there at least 3 times a week, perhaps more. And I usually left about 3:30 because Tom would take a nap. He was in his 90s then. And as I was going down the desk, I always told him, Tom's taking a nap, don't let anybody else disturb him. There was a fellow there, just happened to be signing his name, and my intent when I walked over was to tell him that Tom was taking a nap, But it was like an epiphany, and I don't use that word loosely because the man's an angel he was to me. It was Jack Sanking, and I said, what are you here for? And he said, well, I wanted to visit with the Doolittle Raider, Tom Griffin. And I said, well, come on, we'll go upstairs. Just that fast, that quick, I made a transition. And it truly was one of the best moments because we developed a 20-year relationship from 2005 until today, 2025, as far as I'm concerned. And in the entire time that I traveled with Jack, because we went to numerous military shows together, 2-hour drives down to Louisville and back, and I never heard Jack utter the personal pronouns, I, me, or mine. He was always talking about other people. And I can give you a couple of examples of what I'm talking about. There were a couple of people whose families he helped, which I won't go into detail on that, but one particular one I will. I'm a close friend of Buddy LaRose's, and Buddy's a veteran also. And Jack had a family where their son was going astray, and he was about 13 years old. So Jack mentioned to me, do you think we could get him into Buddy's boxing program and get him straightened out? So we went down and visited with Buddy, and Buddy introduced him to his trainer. But Jack was going to have him registered there and trained. The family didn't have a car, they would make the trip. He's gonna buy him a car, you remember this. And they needed money. And Jack would volunteer all this. And there are numerous examples like that. He never used that word, those pronouns, I, me, or mine. It was always we, or what can we do for you? Jack, I was also a coordinator for the Hornet Breakfast Group, the USS Hornet. Started out in groups of veterans that flew on the Hornet, but it evolved where I took anybody as a member, including guys like me from the Air Force. And so Jack joined that group with us, and we met every month for 19 years straight anyway, until the last year when Jack was failing somewhat. But even when we went to the veterans groups, I have to share this with you because it's a mind boggler. We had an insurance salesman working in our group, and he would get benefits for people. So Jack and Bob, Tom Griffin, the doodle orator, had died by this time. And we had taken another prisoner of war as the guy that Jack took care of and I helped with, Bob Doolin. So Jack goes to the insurance man and says, Bob Doolin was shot down, literally. He was wounded and shrapnel on his back and in his legs. Why don't you see about giving him some benefits? And he didn't say anything to anybody else. He didn't say nothing to me, and he sat at my table. And about 3 months later, lo and behold, Bob Doolin got $4,400 a month that he was entitled to, but didn't know it. Jack wouldn't say anything to anybody. Nobody knows that story until today. I know you didn't. But that's the way the man was. And I won't go on and on about that. Because if I did, we would be here for several hours. I just consider it an honor to have known this man and to be associated with him. But there's another part of that formula that we have to acknowledge, because I can tell you the power behind the throne is sitting right over here. Andrea. And you knew when she was going to correct him, because he did need correcting sometimes. Like, Jackson, that ain't right. Jackson, let me tell you about this. This is the way it really happened, Ray. And when you honor Jackson, and you're honoring his wife also, Andrea. And I'll end this now by saying that I truly do thank God for having provided us with a human being like him, who was so darn good to help other people and never, ever mention it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ray, that was wonderful. We appreciate you sharing those stories about my dad. At this time, I'd like to invite Rich Waterfield. Rich and Dad became close friends at Millicron. They worked together, and he's been a dear, close family friend ever since. Rich, thank you very much.
As Mike said, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Rich Waterfield, and Jack was one of my closest and dearest friends. When Andrea called me a couple days ago and asked me to come and say a few words here, I was unbelievably honored, but also a bit terrified. I was honored that Andrea would even consider me to do something like this, but I was also a bit terrified that I couldn't articulate and deliver a message that was worthy of him and his family. Jack, my relationship with Jack began at Millicron. We both spent more than 40 years at that company, and I knew Jack for probably 30 of those years. It's really hard to put into words what it means to lose a friend like Jack. Some friendships feel less like something you build and more like something you find. It's as if the universe drops someone into your life who just fits. And with Jack, that's the way it was. For me, that's the way it was with Jack. He always had a way of making people feel warm, welcome, and seen. He knew, whether he knew you for 5 minutes or 5 years, he had the rare ability to listen, and I mean really listen. And he'd respond with words of wisdom, encouragement, humor, or sometimes just the right amount of silence. Jack was not only a friend of many, but a consistent source of support, insight, and dignity. He lived his life with integrity, treated others with respect, and he showed up when it mattered most. Friendship for Jack was not about grand gestures or constant conversations. It was about reliability. He was someone that you could trust implicitly. When Jack gave you his word, you could count on it. And when he offered help, he followed through. His quiet loyalty never asked for attention, but always was there. Jack believed in the importance of doing things properly. He held strong values and he lived by those. Whether it meant helping a friend in need or offering thoughtful advice or simply making time to catch up, and he was never too busy to help out or listen. He had a deep sense of duty, and it showed in the way he lived and the relationships that he had. There was also a calm about Jack, a sense of perspective. He didn't speak to fill the air with words, but when he spoke, it carried weight. You listened not because you had to, but because you trusted what he had to say. As we say goodbye to Jack, and we hold on to Jack's values, as well as his unwavering friendship, we need to honor his memory by living with similar care and by being the kind of friend he was to all of us. Though his voice is silent, he continues to speak volumes in the way we treat others, in moments we choose to listen, and friendships we build going forward. We need to carry his legacy, and we need to do it with respect and gratitude. Here a couple weeks ago, Jack called me, and he had just got home from the hospital. I didn't even know he was in the hospital. But he told me he'd just got back home, and he told me what a tough couple of weeks he'd had. And but he felt like he was on the mend. So, I said, well, if it's okay, maybe I could come over and visit. And he said, sure. And Jack never said no. So on the way over there, I thought to myself, well, while I'm there, if I can just bring a smile to his face while I'm there, then that'll be a good thing. So while I was there and we were visiting, we were chatting, Jack was lying back in his bed. He went to reach up to his head and he kind of grimaced in pain. And I said, well, what's wrong? He said, well, my head itches. I said, well, I'll scratch it for you. So I started rubbing the top of his head. And he said, to the left. And so I moved my hand to the right. And he looked up at me with a smirk on his face. He says, your other left, dummy. So we both got to laugh a minute about that. And we continued visiting for a little bit, and I could see that, Jack was starting to tire out a bit. And so I said, well, Jack, I need to get out of here so you can rest. I said, but before I go, I said, I want to tell you something I seen on the internet the other day. I said, reminded me of you and me. I said, well, there's a couple older gentlemen sitting on the front porch in a rocking chair. And one of them looked at the other and said, said, we've been old friends forever. And he said, I expect we'll be old friends right up to the point where we both become senile. And at that point, we're going to become new friends. Well, I got a belly laugh out of Jack then. So at that point, I felt like that, it was a good visit. And I got Jack to smile. Jack's friendship was a gift that I'll carry with me always. And I want to leave everyone, Andrew and Michael, everyone here who was obviously close friends of Jack. Our hearts are heavy now and we're all grieving this loss. But also, let us not forget to cherish and be grateful for all that we had. Thanks.
Thank you, Rich. That was a really beautiful, insightful message. I really enjoyed listening to it. I'm glad they fixed the audio. So, give me that one again. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. At this time, I'd like to ask Matt Dixon to come say a few words. Matt is the son of Carol Willinger. Carol is the younger sister of my dad, Jack. Carol couldn't be here today, but she would like to say a few things, and she asked Matt to deliver remarks for her. Thanks, Matt.
Before I read this letter, I want to tell a real quick Uncle Jack story. I told Ricky and Ryan already, but this is a pretty good story. This past March, I was buying a new used truck up in Waverly, Ohio. And I was on my way back, and Uncle Jack called me, and he's like, "Hey, Matt, you mind coming help me help me get a tree out of my yard? A tree had fallen in my yard. I need some help." I'm like, "Yeah, sure, Uncle Jack. I'll be there. I'm just picking up the truck, and I'll stop back on the way when I come back from Waverly." So I stopped at Kroger off of his exit to get some gas, and I'm pumping gas, and I hear somebody yelling, "Help, help!" And I run over like 4 pumps over, and it's Uncle Jack. And I'm like, "Uncle Jack," I'm like, "What's going on? Are you okay? Is everything all right?" And he's kind of leaning up against his car, and he's like, "Yeah." He's like, $40 just blew out of my car here. And can you help me get it real quick? I'm like, "Uncle Jack, I thought this was an emergency." He goes, "It is an emergency." You remember that? It was the funniest thing. It was absolutely just crazy that we met, that we saw each other at that time. But enough about me. Here's a letter from my mom, his little sister Carol, and then I want to say a quick little prayer after that. "Hello, this is Carol, Jack's little sister, as he used to call me. I so regret not being able to be at the service today. I just had surgery and I'm unable to travel, but I'm there in spirit, sending love to all of you. Jack was the best big brother a girl could ask for. He was always kind and patient, and he really liked to tease me a lot. Mom always called him Happy Jack. And he really was. He was always up in spirit and so much fun to be around. I was proud to call him my big brother. He was very smart and always gave 1,000% in everything he did. I remember when he had neighborhood baseball games, he would routinely get stuck with having to take me or get me down for a nap before he could go. What a pain in the butt that must have been for a teenage boy. Most boys would have complained and been resentful, but you know Jack, he was always loving and kind. I don't remember him ever once being upset or angry with me. I always felt very much loved by him. There weren't very many kids in the neighborhood to play with, so he would take me up to the playground at the Mount Carmel Elementary School. I loved him pushing me on the swings. He made it so much fun and always acted like he really enjoyed playing with me. Jack was also a good student, and he would often help me with my algebra homework. However, there was a certain amount of free labor that I provided. He would be downstairs getting ready for a date with Andrea, and he would say, "Carol, would you run upstairs and get my belt? Carol, will you grab my shoes? Carol, can you stretch my back?" And on and on. And I gladly did it because I adored him. And I was his gopher extraordinaire. What can I say about Jack and Andrea? The love story for the ages. Soulmates. They found each other in high school. Jack was crazy about her, and he talked about her all the time. Whenever he was getting ready for a date with her, he would be so excited and happy, whistling and dancing. They had the real deal, those two. One time, I remember going on a date with them, and reflecting back, I can't imagine Andrea would have been too thrilled to have a little sister tagging along on the date, but she was so kind and gracious. I felt loved by her, and I'm so glad that they found each other. It was a match made in heaven. I love you, Andrea. Whenever I'd visit him, he'd always ask me, "Are you okay? Do you need anything? If you ever need anything, who are you going to call?" And I would say, "Ghostbusters." And he would pretend to get mad, but he wasn't. It was just a little game that we played. It's always difficult when someone you love is passing and you're far away. My wonderful son, Matt, I put the wonderful part in there, she. I'm just kidding. She read that. My wonderful son, Matt, visited Jack on his final day, and he put the phone up to Jack's ear, and I was able to say some of the things that I wanted to say, and that was very comforting. I'm very glad that I had that opportunity. I told Jack that I would, this is the hard part right here. I told Jack that it would be like he was on a vacation, that I would see him again in heaven. And I told him I would wait for him by a place like the Mount Carmel Elementary School playground. Look for me by the swings. I look forward to that day in which there is no sunset and no dawning. I rejoice in the reunion happening in heaven right now. Rest in peace, my sweet brother. Love you forever. Your little sister, Carol. I just want to say one more thing.
Take your time.
Thanks.
It can be rough up there.
Yeah, you did great. I remember when Jenny passed, and Uncle Jack and Aunt Andrea took comfort in knowing that they would see her again. Because we discussed when she was little that she accepted Jesus as her Lord. When she was young, she was baptized. And I remember discussing with Uncle Jack, Jesus plus nothing equals everything. Because it's not about your good works. It's about Jesus' atonement for your sin. And I would get upset by that, before when I would hear from other Christians when they would say that before I was a Christian, when they would say that I was a sinner, because I would think, well, I'm a pretty good person. But what I didn't know was how much Jesus loves us. That's what I didn't know. Don Piper wrote a book called 90 Minutes in Heaven, and he was clinically dead for 90 minutes. He had no heartbeat, no brain waves, but he was able, in the time that he was passed, he was able to stand in front of Jesus. And he said, if you took all of the love that you've ever experienced in your entire lifetime and you compress it into one moment, you multiply that times 1,000, that's how much Jesus loves you. So when you compare our love compared to that love, we're going to fall short. Uncle Jack might have been the most loving, compassionate, kind person I knew. If he were here today, he would want to know that he's going to see you again. He would want to know that you would too experience that love. So I think he'd like us to pray, so I'm going to pray real quick. I think he would want us to say something like this. Lord, thank you for the life you gave Jack. Thank you for the love that you give us here on earth. Lord, we thank you for your promise. We thank you for the promise that we'll see Jack again. And we thank you for your son, Jesus. Lord, we want to see you and we want to see Jack and all those that we've lost here on earth. Forgive us for when we fall short of not only our own expectations, but your expectations, and when we fall short of your perfect love. Lord, help us navigate through this broken world. We do acknowledge you are God who came to earth to save us from our imperfect human condition. And we thank you that, Jesus. Amen.
Thanks, Matt. That was really great. We kind of got a twofer deal there from you and Carol, but that was a wonderful message. Very helpful, and I really appreciate it. And Carol, I think you're probably out there watching, listening now. Thank you for your message too. Those were some great remarks. You brought back some really good memories. So thanks to both of you. I really appreciate it. At this time, I'd like to invite Ray Ross to come share a few words. Ray is former CEO and Chief Operating Officer of Millicron. He and my dad became great friends while we were at Millicron. Ray was an important mentor to my dad, and just a really close, dear friend. So thank you very much, Ray, for being here. We appreciate it. Thank you.
My old vocal cords aren't what they used to be. And I suppose a lot of you have the same kind of problem. So I have to drink a lot of water when I talk. Andrea asked me to kind of fill everybody in on what his business experience was, because that's where I knew Jack. Can you hear me in the back? Thank you. Let me start out with the first time I met Jack. First of all, Jack and I both went through the apprentice school at the mill. He was 2 years behind me, but we both went through the school, and we took different paths after we came out of the school. The first time I really met Jack, and actually I don't think I really met him, I met Andrea. We were at a party someplace in Mount Carmel, and it was about 63, I believe. And Andrea was so excited because her and Jack were going to move to Philadelphia. Am I correct, Philadelphia? I thought so. Anyway, I had just come back in 1960. I left the company and I went to work for a plastics manufacturer. Frankly, I got interested in plastics. I had somebody who'd been trying to hire me, and I thought this was a good opportunity because the company was going into a recession. Actually, the whole country was. And instead of having to lay off some person with some children,
I'm single. I said, hey, why don't I just volunteer? These people wanted to hire me anyway. I'd like to give it a whirl. So I went to work for the plastics company. The second time I met, and this time I actually kind of met Jack, I saw him. I didn't really meet him, I saw him. They had, the mill decided they were going to go into the plastics machinery business. And we were a vendor of the mill, making some parts that they used on their machines. So they asked us, would we be willing to buy the material they needed to test their machines under our name, and they would pay us for it and then transport it over to the plant. We were just across the railroad tracks from the plant. And they did this because they didn't want anybody else knowing they were looking at getting into the business. Part of that was, as they got toward the end of the period when the first prototype machines were ready to go, they decided to take the sales force that was going to sell them and bring them into a plastics plant and see what it was they were gonna sell. Which is a good idea, because all of these guys were all metal benders. They worked in a division where they bend metal in all kinds of funny shapes. They were good at it, but they didn't have a clue about plastics. So they brought him in as a group. Jack was in that group, and we walked him through the shop. We showed him how the machines worked. We showed him what kind of parts you could make. We let him talk to people. And they all in their group, and they left. Jack was in that group. I don't remember actually seeing Jack, which is hard to believe. With his personality, it's pretty hard to miss him. But I did. The third time was at the it was a meeting that we had. I had decided to, actually what happened is we got invited, myself and my boss at the plastics company, got invited to go take a look at the machines and give opinions to what we thought about them. I had by this time decided I'm getting tired of running and having a bunch of people running machines and calling me at 2 o'clock in the morning because they got a water leak or something. And I said, I see all these salesmen coming in and they're having the 3 martini lunches and driving big fancy automobiles. I'd like to get in on that. So I'd already decided I was going to sell rather than work with the machines. And I was very close to making a deal with the #1 competitor in the business. We went over to take a look at the machines, and I was so impressed with what they had designed and what they had done in order to make it simpler for people to operate these machines. And I told him about it. Well, as it turns out, the guy who was the chief engineer, who later became my boss for almost 20 years, Dave Knopfsinger, he was the chief engineer. And he said, hey, he pulled me aside. He said, would you be interested in selling? And I said, yeah, as a matter of fact, I am interested. Why don't you tell me what you got? Well, as it turned out, in about a week later, we had a couple of conversations back and forth, and I decided to join the mill in their plastics machinery division. Now, the plastics machinery division was metal bending and this brand new machine called a plastics injection molding machine. We got 12 guys. Now, the 12 guys had a difficult time making the shift from metal bending to plastic. And we were having problems internally because there was who's going to be in charge, who's going to this, who's going to do that. So meantime, Jack now has gone from becoming a service engineer to a salesman. And he's doing pretty good selling metal bending. And my boss, first of all, I went in as a sales trainee, which I figured would be about 3 months, and I was going to hit the road and sell machines. Well, that isn't exactly what happened. So I get a call from, I went out when the first machines were ready to go. We showed them in October or November of 1968. That was the first time they were introduced to the market. All the salesmen are all around, they're crawling all over the machines, everybody's gung-ho to do something, but they didn't really know exactly what to do. So I get a bunch of catalogs and I went around with each of the salesmen, calling on customers and trying to get them, show them how to sell it and get them to understand, and our potential customers to understand, we really are not just machine tools. We're also going to be in the plastics business. Well, about, I guess, a year, not quite a year, 3/4 of a year after that, the sales manager, who was in charge of all of us, he said, "Ray, we're having a lot of trouble out there with this territory in New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania." And I said, "Yeah, I can see it. I see there's no orders really coming in." He said, "I want you to go out and see what's going on. Jack Sinking is a salesman out there, and he'll pick you up at the airport and he'll take you around to his customers. You can talk to them." I said, "Okay, that sounds like a plan." So I did. I went out there. I spent a week with Jack. I came back. The real reason I was going out there was the sales manager wanted to know whether he should fire Jack or not because he couldn't sell these machines. And I came back and I said, "Look, the problem is not Jack. The problem is you sent the lamb into the wolf's den." I said, "I don't know if the good Lord himself could sell new machines in that market with all the competition and the kind of people you're dealing with. They're really, really nasty people." And I said, "They shake your hand and say, 'We got a deal,' turn around and give the order to somebody else." I said, it's a very tough market. Jack is just too nice a guy to be in that market. "Well, we'll have to see what we can do." Well, it wasn't but a month or two after that, they decided to break the divisions apart, create the plastics machinery division, and let the Metadynamics, the metal benders, do their thing. I get a call from our general manager. He says, "Ray," this is about 5:30 at night, and I'm in my office yet. He said, "Ray, could you come over to my office?" I said, "Sure, no problem." I come over and he said, "Ray, we're going to break this apart." And he says, "I want you to be the sales manager." I said, I'm a sales trainee, or I'm a tech guy, but I never got a chance to get into the field." He says, I know, but we've seen you and we think you can get with these guys and you can help them be successful." I said, "Well, what's the worst going to happen? He'd fire me." So I said, "The condition is I get to pick 6 of the salesmen." Well, that seems reasonable. So you'll never guess who's number 1 on the list. Jack. So we decide Jack can be successful, but we've got to get Jack into the market where he can be successful. And that's when we transferred him to Indianapolis. Jack has been trying to buy me steaks every year from that day for getting him transferred out of that jungle into Indianapolis. And he was successful. I mean, he was unbelievably successful. He was Salesman of the Year 6 times. He and by other really good salesmen, a fellow by the name of Tony Latarowicz, were constantly fighting to see who was going to get the title. And the salesman, I mean, you don't think it. Salesmen have egos. They want to be the winners. They want to be the guy that wins the trophy, and they go at it. We were at a show in 1982, and what we did is, if you sold a machine at the show, you got a little rose on your lapel. And if you sold 5 machines at the show, you got a gold one instead of the 4 red ones. These guys would hide what they had inside their jacket pockets so the other salesman wouldn't know what they had. And Jack and Tony would end up looking like World War II heroes with all the little things they had in their inside pocket. Anyway, Jack was very successful there, and about every 4 years, I cut his territory in half. And Jack would come to me and be crying the blues. Ray, why are you doing this? I said, Jack, trust me, you will, in 2 years, you'll be selling more in the smaller territory and you'll be home more often with your family. He said, well, I know, but I said, don't worry, I'm gonna cover you for the first year. Whatever you made, I'll make sure you make at least that much the first year. He always beat it. And I think I broke it up 4 different times. But his biggest sales asset was his service parts manager, Andrea. His customers didn't call our service parts department, they called Andrea. Andrea would arrange for the parts, get all the paperwork done to get it done properly so we didn't have a delay. Next morning, Jack would get up at 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning with a little trailer that he towed behind his company car, which, by the way, was illegal, which I want you to know I overlooked. Anyway, and he would come down, pick up the service parts and get them to customers. Customers love Jack. He was always happy. Always happy. I don't care. Even when things weren't going exactly the way they were supposed to go, he was happy. We had another opportunity, which is a good example of this. RCA in Indianapolis was about to start producing large plastic cabinets for TVs. This is when you had a cathode ray tube as your TV, not what we see today. There were going to be 10,000 ton machines. This was a big order and a lot of dollars involved and a lot of commission, I might also add. But they had a problem. They wanted to try one first using not our control, but somebody else's control, and we were supposed to marry it to our machine. And I said, Jack, we're not going to do that. He said, why not? He said, we ought to do it. Somebody else is going to do it. And I said, well, let somebody else do it, but I'm going to tell you, it won't work. It just won't work. We know that control won't work. Oh, geez, Ray. He'd go away, he'd come back 2 or 3 days later after talking to him. Ray, he said, you got to do this for him. You got to do it. I said, Jack, I'm saving you an order. You don't believe it, but I'm telling you, I'm saving you an order. Well, as it turned out, they bought the other machine, and exactly what happened as I said would happen. The machine wouldn't work. Guess who got the order for 10 machines? Jack.
Bravo.
What can I tell you? We had another little confrontation, which he was part of, where we decided we had a problem with painting our equipment because we gave customers this ability to pick one of 57 different colors. Well, it wasn't too bad if you were selling to a large corporation because they usually had one of those standard colors there. But if you're dealing with an entrepreneur, he's got 4 or 5 machines, and it's a nice small business. The last thing they would pick is the color, and they have to check with their wife to see what color the machine should be. Meantime, we want to ship the machines. We can't ship them because we can't get the color specified for the machine. So this has got to stop. Nobody else does that. Why are we doing it? And the salesmen, as a group, just about had a revolt because they thought this was the most wonderful opportunity they had to show customers how they could work with them. Well, the problem was they weren't working with the right person who was a customer because they couldn't get the color picked. and we're all clogged up. We had assemblers painting machines, and they were good assemblers, but not so good when it came to painting sometimes. So we went to a standard color. Well, the sales force decides they're gonna test me. I don't think Jack was totally involved in it, but I got a sneaky suspicion he was in the group. So one of the salesmen goes out and he gets an order for 4 machines. They bring it to me and I said, oh, it's beautiful. I said, there's only one problem. It says here you want them painted this color. You know, we don't paint them that color. He said, well, the customer says he won't take them. I said, well, I'm sorry. You got 2 choices. Either convince him to go with our new standard, or he can take it and take it to a Mako shop and get it painted any color he wants. But we're not gonna change it. That's the way it's gonna be. Oh, can't do this, can't do this. Take it back, talk to your customer. Well, we went back and forth a couple of times, and finally, customer accepted really our color, and our color scheme was better than what he was gonna buy anyway. And that was the last time anybody challenged our new paint colors. Like I said, I'm not sure Jack was totally involved in it, but I had a sneaky suspicion he had a little bit to do with it. But finally, we as a group, in the Plastic Machinery Group, were very successful. And we were very successful because of the sales force we had. And Jack was one of the principal salesmen in our group. We ended up essentially being number 2 in the world, number 1 in the US. And when the day was left, when I left Plastic Machinery, we only had really 1 domestic competitor. And we had pretty well choked off the Japanese and the Germans. I got Shanghai down to corporate and ended up being president of the company. And I went through pretty much the same turmoil there as we did in Plastics Machinery. Jack got to the point where he said, you know, I'm really getting tired of being on the road every day, and I think I'd like to come back in. And I agreed. I felt it was really valuable to have somebody like Jack who could work with our new salesmen, go out with them every once in a while, talk to them, help mentor them, and show them what he did to become a really good salesman. And he did that for quite a while. And then he decided he was going to retire. Well, he came down to visit me one day at corporate. And he said, Ray, you know, sometime I'd really like to sit behind the president's desk. And I said, well, you know, that's fine. Next time you're down, why don't you let me know, and we'll work on something. We'll work something out. So it was, I don't know, maybe a month or 6 weeks later, he comes down, and he told me he was coming down. So I contacted the corporate photographer, who was, I want to tell you, this guy was really good. He could make a silk purse out of his house here. And if you saw my pictures, you realize I'm telling you the truth. So I kind of got a hold of Jack, and I said, Jack, come on in my office. Come on. He said, what do you want? I said, well, you said you wanted to sit behind the president's desk. There it is. Go sit behind it. And he says, well, he said, are you sure? And I said, well, sure. I mean, the desk's not going to bite you or anything. Just go sit down. That's what you wanted to do. And so he sits back there, and we're chit-chatting, and in comes the photographer. And I said, Jack, why don't you give the photographer a big smile? And he got a great picture. And you have it someplace in Jack's memorabilia of Cincinnati Millicron, which nobody has. Nobody can touch all the stuff that he has. I mean, it boggles the mind. I don't know how you're going to handle it all, but I want to tell you this. If there was a better salesman, I don't know where he was. And I can tell you right now, Jack's up there selling like hell. I'm not sure what he's selling, but I can assure you, whatever it is he's selling, he'll be successful. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ray. It's really nice to hear about that other side of Jack, the work side. Those are some really funny stories. Thank you very much for sharing. At this time, I'd like to invite anyone else who would like to say a few words about Jack. You're more than welcome to. If not, that's fine too. Is anyone interested?
We met Jack, or my husband did, in high school, and he was from Batavia, and Herb was from Williamsburg. And so that was kind of a,
Actually, I'm sorry to interrupt, but can I ask you to come on?
no.
No? Okay, okay.
So there was kind of a rivalry between the two. So Jack went to Millicron, Herb went to GE, and we traveled all over the country. So finally, Jack called Herb and he wanted to play golf. There was a tournament. So that kindled our relationship again. So then we started having lunch or dinner with Jack and Andrea. And it always got back to who could play the best basketball. Was it Batavia or was it Williamsburg? And Jack never would give in. He fought Herb and they argued till today. And he can't argue, but he's arguing up there that Batavia's better than Williamsburg. And Herb's home saying, no, Jack, Williamsburg's the best. So we have to have all these businessmen talk, but there was a fun side of Jack that was just very, very special.
Thank you very much. I think I remember Dad talking about Herb and basketball.
Yeah,
That rings a bell.
he loved it, he loved it.
I don't know all these people, so I can't picture their names, but some of their faces rather, but some of the names do stick out. Would anyone else like to say anything before we adjourn? Okay, well, again, on behalf of my mom and my family, I really thank everyone for coming out today. It means a lot to us to see how many people felt this way about Jack. And it was a pleasure meeting those of you who I don't know. It was great seeing those of you who I do know again. And thanks again for coming out. Look forward to talking to you and seeing you again soon. Thank you.
Yeah.